Emma never thought her marriage would end in silence. For more than 2 decades, she had believed in the life she built with David. They had raised their son Noah together, shared holidays, arguments, and reconciliations, and all the little daily moments that form the fabric of family. Yet one cold evening, as dinner cooled untouched on the table, David quietly told her he couldn't do it anymore. His words didn't explode into the air. They landed heavy, like a stone dropped in a pond, rippling through everything she thought was secure, without a fight, without even looking back. He gathered a small bag and left. For a long time, Emma didn't move from her chair. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence, the sound almost mocking. She stared at the empty doorway, as if willing him to return. But deep down she knew he wouldn't. Something inside her cracked that night, though the world outside carried on unchanged. Cars still passed by on the street, neighbors still watched television in their living rooms, and the stars still appeared in the night sky. But for Emma, everything felt unfamiliar, almost hostile. The following days blurred together. Emma drifted through her routines like a shadow, folding laundry, scrubbing dishes, paying bills, all without truly feeling present. She found herself setting out 2 plates for breakfast before remembering she only needed 1. At night, she would lie awake in their bed, the emptiness on the other side more painful than any words David might have spoken in anger. The absence was louder than any fight could have been. She tried to protect Noah from the depth of her grief. He was 25, old enough to have his own worries and dreams, and she didn't want to weigh him down. Whenever he visited or called, she put on a mask of calm, pretending she was coping. But Noah had always been observant. Even as a child, he noticed the smallest shifts in her mood. The quiet sighs she thought went unheard. Now, as a grown man, he could see straight through her. One evening, Emma sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of tea untouched before her. Her hands were wrapped tightly around the mug, not for warmth, but as if holding onto it might keep her steady. She didn't hear Noah come in until he pulled out a chair across from her. His presence startled her, though his expression was soft, almost protective. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice carrying a steadiness that surprised her. "You don't have to do this alone." The words cut through her fog. She blinked at him, unsure what to say. Part of her wanted to collapse into tears, to let him hold the weight she could no longer carry. Another part of her resisted fiercely. He was her son, her child, the one she had spent years protecting from pain. How could she allow him to take on hers? Yet when she looked into his eyes, she saw not pity, but strength, something she hadn't expected. In that moment, a fragile warmth flickered in her chest. It was the first time since David's departure that she felt even a hint of hope. She wanted to tell Noah how much his words meant, how desperately she needed someone to lean on, but the words tangled in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded, her eyes glistening, though no tears fell. That night, as she lay awake, Emma thought about Noah. She remembered the boy who used to leave sticky handprints on the refrigerator, the teenager who stayed up late playing his guitar, the young man who had just begun carving out his own life. Now he was stepping into a role she hadn't expected. He was steadying her in ways she didn't realize she needed. Still, doubt gnawed at her. Was it fair to let him? Would she be taking something from him, anchoring him to her sadness when he should be free to live his own story? She wanted to protect him from the weight of her broken marriage, yet at the same time, she felt an undeniable comfort in knowing he was there. Over the next few days, Noah continued to show up. He fixed the loose handle on the back door without being asked, brought her groceries, and even made her laugh once when she thought she had forgotten how. Each gesture seemed small on the surface, but to Emma, they were lifelines. Every act reminded her that she wasn't abandoned, that someone still cared deeply enough to notice. One afternoon, as she folded laundry in the quiet of the living room, she heard Noah in the kitchen humming a tune. The sound carried through the house, light and familiar. For a moment, she closed her eyes and let herself breathe it in. It reminded her of a time before everything fell apart, but also of something new, something stronger. She realized then that Noah was no longer the boy she had raised. He was a man steady and kind, with a presence that soothed the cracks in her heart. Yet even as she leaned into that comfort, fear lingered. She worried that relying on him too much would trap them both. She wanted to be strong again, to show him she could stand on her own. But every time she tried to push him away with reassurances, he responded with patience, almost as if he knew she needed time to find her footing. The struggle inside her was constant. To accept his help or to protect him from her pain. She didn't know which path was right. But deep down, a truth began to take root. Perhaps healing wasn't about doing everything alone. Perhaps it was about letting someone walk beside you when the road felt impossible to travel. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house grew quiet again, Emma sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket. The cool air pressed against her skin, but the weight in her chest felt lighter than it had in weeks. She replayed Noah's words in her mind. "You don't have to do this alone." They echoed softly, like a promise. Like the beginning of something she hadn't dared to imagine yet. For the first time since David's departure, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as broken as she thought. And though she didn't yet know where this new path with Noah would lead, she felt the faintest spark of courage to face whatever came next. The weeks after David's departure stretched on like an endless season. Emma often woke with the ache of emptiness beside her and the haunting memory of promises unkept. Yet, through the growing silence of her home, Noah's presence became something she hadn't expected. An anchor she didn't realize she needed. Noah had always been thoughtful, but now he was different, stronger, more decisive. He no longer came by just to visit. He came to care for her. It began with small gestures. He took out the trash without being asked, dropped off groceries, and stayed longer after dinners. Emma thought he was just trying to distract her. But she soon realized he was carrying a weight quietly, steadily, as though he had been preparing for this moment his whole life. One Saturday morning she heard hammering in the backyard. When she stepped outside, Noah was fixing the broken fence. His sleeves were rolled up, his face set with concentration. The sight made her pause. For years, she had begged David to repair it, but he always postponed it with excuses. Watching Noah work, Emma felt something unexpected stir in her chest. Not only relief, but admiration for the young man her son had become. "You didn't have to do that," Shay said, her voice soft but sincere. Noah glanced up with a faint smile. "I know, but I wanted to." Emma held on to that simple reply long after she returned indoors. She realized how different Noah's words sounded compared to David's. Where David had once said, "I'll do it tomorrow," Noah said, "I wanted to." That difference, small yet profound, reminded her that love was not only spoken, but proven in action. Days blurred into each other. Yet Noah's efforts never wavered. He started cooking dinner once or twice a week. Emma remembered walking into the kitchen one evening, expecting the cold stillness of loneliness, only to find Noah standing at the stove, humming as he stirred a pot. The smell of pasta sauce filled the air. She leaned against the doorframe, silently watching him. He looked so natural there, so steady, as though the kitchen belonged to him. "Mom, come sit," he said when he noticed her. "Dinner's almost ready." She smiled faintly, still carrying the heaviness of her broken heart. But the gesture warmed her. Sitting down, she let him serve her a plate. And for the first time in weeks, she ate without feeling like she was forcing every bite. When the plates were cleared, Emma whispered, "I don't know what I'd do without you." Noah looked at her with quiet intensity. "Mom, you've carried me my whole life. Let me carry you now." The sincerity of his voice struck something deep within her. It wasn't pity, it was devotion, the kind that made her feel both vulnerable and safe at the same time. She blinked, unsure of what to say, and simply nodded. The nights were hardest. Emma often found herself standing by the window, staring into the dark yard, wondering how everything had changed so quickly. She would recall the sound of David's footsteps leaving the house, and it replayed like a wound that refused to close. Yet then she would remember Noah's steady presence, the way he looked at her without judgment, the way he stepped up without hesitation, and it gave her a strength she thought she had lost. One Sunday, after Emma had spent hours trying to organize the scattered bills on the table, Noah walked in and sat down beside her. "Let me help," he said, gently pulling a stack toward him. Emma sighed. "You shouldn't have to. These are my problems." "No," Noah replied calmly. "There are problems. We're in this together." That word, together, wrapped around her like a blanket. It had been so long since she felt she had a partner in anything. David's absence had carved a hollow space in her life. But Noah's presence was slowly filling it not with promises, but with action, reliability, and a kind of love she didn't know how to name. She watched him, his brow furrowed in concentration as he sorted through the bills. And she wondered how it had come to this, how her son had become the man she could rely on. The thought was bittersweet. She felt guilt for leaning on him, but at the same time, she felt a quiet relief that she wasn't completely alone. That evening, Emma sat on the couch while Noah played his guitar. It had been years since she heard him play. His fingers moved over the strings with ease, the melody soft and warm. Emma closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. For a few moments, the heaviness inside her lifted, replaced by something tender. "You should never have stopped playing," she said softly when he finished. Noah shrugged with a small smile. "I guess I was waiting for the right time to pick it up again." Emma didn't reply, but she knew what he meant. This time was different. The house was quieter, lonelier, but Noah was filling it with something new: music, laughter, and a strength she hadn't expected from him. Still, guilt lingered. Late at night, when Noah had gone back to his own place, Emma would sit on the edge of her bed and wonder if she was holding him back. He was young, with dreams still ahead of him. Shouldn't he be chasing them instead of worrying about her? She wanted to protect him from the weight of her broken marriage, but the truth was she needed him. That truth made her both grateful and afraid. As the days passed, Emma began to notice something subtle but undeniable. The line between mother and son, protector and protected, was shifting. Noah wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man, one who had stepped up in ways his father never had. And though Emma tried to fight the feeling, a part of her began to lean into his presence, not just with gratitude, but with something more complicated, something unspoken. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Emma whispered almost to herself, "I don't know how I'll ever stand on my own again." Noah turned to her, his voice calm but firm. "You don't have to. Not anymore." His words settled into her heart, heavier than she expected, stirring emotions she wasn't ready to face. She looked at him, then really looked at him, and realized that he wasn't just filling the gap David left. He was becoming something entirely different. And in that moment, Emma wondered, with both fear and hope, where this unexpected strength of his might lead them. Autumn arrived quietly, painting the small town in gold and crimson. Emma often found herself walking down the street with Noah at her side. And every time she did, she felt the difference in her life. Where there used to be silence and emptiness, there was now a steady rhythm, a sense of companionship she hadn't expected. She had thought David's absence would break her, but Noah's presence was piecing her back together in ways she couldn't have imagined. One chilly evening, they sat together in the living room, a soft fire crackling in the fireplace. The glow of the flames lit up Noah's face, and Emma found herself staring longer than she meant to. His eyes reflected warmth and steadiness, and the sight made her heart beat a little faster. She quickly looked away, ashamed of the strange flutter in her chest. This was her son, her boy, who had grown into a man before her eyes. But the truth was clear. The man sitting across from her was no longer the child she once tucked into bed. Noah noticed her silence. "You're thinking too much again?" he said softly. Leaning forward, Emma let out a small laugh, though it sounded fragile. "I can't help it. I keep wondering how everything changed so quickly." He nodded slowly, his gaze steady on her. "Change doesn't always wait for us to be ready. Sometimes we just have to step into it." His words struck her more deeply than she expected. She felt seen, understood, in a way that David had never managed. With Noah, conversations didn't end in frustration or distance. They lingered, pulling her closer without effort. In the days that followed, Emma began to notice little things about him that she had overlooked before. The way he carried himself with quiet confidence, the way his laughter filled the kitchen when he told her stories, the way he always seemed to know when she needed him most. One afternoon, as she folded laundry, she caught herself smiling at the thought of him. The smile faded quickly, replaced by guilt. She shook her head, telling herself she was being foolish. He was her son, and she had no right to feel this way. But the heart is rarely logical. The turning point came on a rainy night. Thunder rumbled across the sky as Emma sat curled up on the couch, staring out the window. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside her chest. She thought she was alone until Noah walked in carrying a blanket. Without a word, he draped it over her shoulders and sat down beside her. "You don't have to stay," she whispered, her voice unsteady. "I want to," he replied, just as steady as ever. The room was filled with the sound of rain against the glass. Emma turned to look at him, and for the first time, she didn't hide what she was feeling. There was longing in her eyes, sadness, and something more fragile, hope. Noah didn't flinch. Instead, he reached for her hand, holding it gently as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Her breath caught. His touch was warm, grounding, and it sent a rush of emotions through her that she could no longer deny. She should have pulled away, but she didn't. She let the moment linger because it felt too real, too honest to ignore. "You're too young to carry all of this for me," Emma said finally, her voice trembling. Noah shook his head. "Age doesn't matter. What matters is how much someone is willing to give. And I'm willing, Mom, more than you know." His words hung in the air like a secret waiting to be spoken aloud. Emma felt tears welling in her eyes, not from sorrow this time, but from the overwhelming realization that she wasn't invisible. She wasn't unwanted. Someone saw her, truly saw her. And it was the one person she least expected. From that night on, things changed in quiet ways. They never said anything aloud, but the air between them carried a weight of unspoken emotion. Their conversations grew softer, their laughter more intimate, and their silences less lonely. Emma found herself waiting for his visits, her heart quickening whenever she heard his footsteps outside. She tried to tell herself it was just gratitude, but deep down she knew it was something else. One evening, after dinner, Emma washed the dishes while Noah dried them. Their hands brushed as they passed plates back and forth, and each touch lingered just a second longer than necessary. Emma could feel her cheeks warm, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she let the silence speak for them. Filling the room with a quiet electricity, neither of them dared to name. Later that night, she sat alone in her room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. "What am I doing?" she whispered to herself. She was a woman who had been abandoned, broken by the man she trusted most. She was a mother, supposed to protect her son, not lean on him in ways that blurred the lines. And yet when she thought of Noah, she felt alive again. Alive in a way David had never made her feel, not even in the beginning. The conflict inside her grew, but so did the bond between them. Emma realized that Noah wasn't just filling an empty role, he was carving out something entirely new. He was not David's replacement. He was Noah, loyal, steadfast, and quietly devoted. One Saturday afternoon, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip low, Emma finally found the courage to speak. "Noah," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what are we doing? This closeness. It feels like more than it should." Noah turned to her, his eyes unwavering. "I don't want to pretend anymore. You're not just my mom, you're the person I admire most, the one I want to protect, the one I—" He trailed off as though the words were too heavy to release. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. The truth lay between them, fragile yet undeniable. She felt both fear and longing, caught between what was right and what her heart desperately craved. The evening air grew colder, but Emma felt only the heat of his presence beside her. For a moment, she considered ending it, drawing a line, and reminding herself of the roles they were meant to play. But instead, she let the silence linger, because she knew that once certain truths are spoken, they can never be undone. And in that silence, Emma realized something she could no longer deny. Her son had stepped up in ways she never expected. And her heart, whether she wanted it to or not, had begun to answer. The days that followed were heavy with unspoken words. Emma tried to carry on as if nothing had shifted, but her heart betrayed her at every turn. She found herself waiting for Noah's calls, for the sound of his footsteps at the door, for the way his eyes always seemed to rest on her with quiet care. She told herself it was wrong to feel this way, that it was gratitude twisted into something more. Yet no matter how she argued with herself, the longing remained. One evening, Emma sat by the kitchen window, staring at the fading sunlight across the yard. The house was too quiet. Ever since David had left, silence had become a companion she never asked for. But with Noah, the silence had turned into something else. It was filled with meaning, comfort, and a sense of being seen. Now, as she sat alone, she realized she didn't want to go back to emptiness. The door opened, and Noah stepped inside, brushing the cold air from his jacket. Emma looked up, her heart lurching at the sight of him. He seemed older every day, not in years, but in presence. There was a strength in him that steadied her in ways she didn't think possible. "You're quiet tonight," he said gently, taking a seat across from her. Emma hesitated, then spoke. "Noah, this isn't easy for me. I feel torn. I'm your mother, but what I feel now, it's different. And I don't know if that makes me selfish or broken." He reached across the table, his hand brushing against hers. His touch was steady, patient. "You're not broken, Mom. You're human. You've been hurt, and I don't want you to think you're unworthy of love because of what Dad did." The sincerity in his voice sent tears to her eyes. She pulled her hand back quickly, afraid of letting the moment grow into something she couldn't control. But her tears betrayed her. She had hidden her pain for so long, yet Noah had seen through it without her saying a word. That night, Emma lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every thought circled back to him, his smile, his voice, the way he had stepped in when David walked out. Noah had become more than family. He had become her anchor, her safe place. Yet the fear of crossing a line gnawed at her. Could love exist here without destroying them both? The following weekend, they went grocery shopping together. It was an ordinary thing, yet Emma noticed how natural it felt. He pushed the cart, reaching for things she forgot, making her laugh when she least expected it. To anyone else, they might have looked like any other family. But to Emma, the bond between them carried something deeper, something she couldn't keep denying. When they returned home, they cooked dinner side by side. Music played softly in the background, and Emma caught herself humming along. For the first time in months, she felt light, as though a burden had been lifted. Noah noticed, smiling as he slid a plate toward her. "I like seeing you like this," he said warmly. Her heart swelled. "You make it easier." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Their eyes met, and the room grew still. The air was thick with everything unsaid. Emma wanted to step back to remind herself of the roles they were supposed to play. But instead she stood frozen, caught in the gravity of his presence. "Noah," she whispered, "this can't be simple." "Maybe it doesn't have to be," he answered. The days that followed were filled with this tension, soft glances, careful touches, silences that spoke louder than words. Emma wrestled with her conscience, but her heart was already making its choice. She realized it one night as they sat outside, watching the stars. Noah leaned back in his chair, his hand brushing against hers on the armrest. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let the warmth of his touch settle into her, as though it belonged there. "You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever," she said, her voice breaking. "What's that?" he asked softly. "Hope." For the first time, she didn't hide the tears in her eyes. Noah didn't try to stop them. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice steady. "Then let me keep giving it to you." The honesty in his words shattered the last of her defenses. She knew then that their bond had transformed into something neither of them could deny. It wasn't about replacing David. It wasn't about roles or expectations. It was about two people who had found each other in the ruins of betrayal and heartbreak. Emma closed her eyes. breathing deeply. She thought of the years she had spent waiting for someone to see her, to love her without conditions. David had left her with nothing but pain. But Noah had given her a reason to believe again. The weeks turned into months. And though they never announced what they felt to the world, their home became a place of warmth again. They shared meals, laughter, quiet conversations by the fire. Emma felt her heart healing not because time had passed, but because Noah had chosen to stay. One evening, as winter snow began to fall outside, Emma sat with Noah in the living room. The glow of the Christmas tree lit up the space, soft and golden. She turned to him, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and love. "Noah," she said gently, "I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I do know this: I don't feel alone anymore. And that's because of you." He looked at her, his eyes steady and full of something she had only ever dreamed of seeing. "Then that's enough for me," he said simply. And in that moment, Emma realized that love didn't always follow the rules. Sometimes it appeared where you least expected it, reshaping everything you thought you knew. It wasn't about labels or roles anymore. It was about two hearts that had found each other. When they needed it most, for the first time in years, Emma felt free. Free to love, free to hope, free to step into the unknown without fear. And as the snow continued to fall outside, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her life had begun again the moment Noah stepped up.